Welcome back to the Ohio State Pick Show on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises, Ward, Bill Landis, giving you our picks for Ohio State versus Penn State in the shoe on Saturday. Ohio State favored by 4.5, and the total is 45.5. It feels like this is going to be a close game. I was looking at some national picks. It feels like everybody's picking it kind of close, around the same score. Guys that I think, like, Ohio State fans are legitimately, I don't know, wary, whatever word, Landis, you want to use. Like, I don't think they're underestimating Penn State coming into this game. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think they are understanding that these are two really good teams. Not dissimilar, I think, from the vibes going into the Notre Dame game. I would be curious, I guess, what Ohio State fans think of Penn State compared to Notre Dame and like the difficulties of that matchup. I don't feel like I have a great understanding of that, but I think everyone knows how good these two teams are and is expecting a close game. I don't know that they're fearful of, like, there's no way Ohio State can win, but I think they believe it's going to be tight.
Austin, if we're using that as a comparison, and that game came down to 1 inch on the last play of the game, do you think Penn State at home is a tougher test for Ohio State, or was Notre Dame on the road a tougher test for Ohio State?
I think that the comparison is fitting and apt. I mean, they're going to try and play the exact same way, with leaning on their defense and trying to milk the clock on offense and use a powerful rushing attack and have a good offensive line. And I think that they are comparable, similar opponents. So I think going on the road to play Notre Dame at night, amped up atmosphere, first time for a lot of those guys on Ohio State's roster to do that and be in that situation. I do think that was a bigger challenge. And I think that going to Penn State last year was a daunting one. And the Buckeyes, a lot of guys who were involved in this game, answered that challenge in the second half. It was an unforgettable performance from a handful of guys, Marvin Harrison and JT Tuimoloau first and foremost. But that game, I don't know how much it'll have in common, the Penn State-Ohio State matchup from 2022, which was really high scoring and wild and out of control in some ways. But looking at this year, I think we're probably going to be trending towards something closer to Ohio State, Notre Dame. And I think that the Irish actually, in my mind right now, and maybe this is just, again, going back to Penn State's schedule and who they have or haven't played, I think Notre Dame probably stands as the tougher test at this point, but we'll see on Saturday. That's part of the fun. You can't dismiss Penn State. It's also a compliment to say that they are on that same footing as Notre Dame based on what they just did to USC last week.
So I asked our tech subscribers, and if you want to be a tech subscriber, you can join us for a 2-week free trial. You send a text to this number, 614-662-4509. You get a link back to sign up. How confident are you in Ohio State beating Penn State on a scale of 1 to 10? This is not a question that asks for a pick. Your confidence level, it's a 5.8. And so that's pretty in the middle. There are not a lot of games where Ohio State fans go in at less than maybe like a 7.5 in terms of like, I think the Buckeyes are going to win this one. So I think that's real. And then I asked about how good, Landis, you said that you kind of were curious, how good do they think Penn State is? I didn't ask in comparison to Notre Dame, but I gave these choices. What's your closest opinion about Ohio State entering this game? Penn State is very good in the thick of the playoff race and has a major chance to win. Penn State is probably good, but untested. Penn State is solid, but Ohio State is clearly better. Or Penn State is overrated and not a team to be worried about. More than half, 54%, Penn State is very good in the thick of the playoff race and has a major chance to win. 42%, probably good, but untested. Only 4% combined on they're overrated or Ohio State's much better. Again, Landis, that's a lot of respect for Penn State from Ohio State fans, is it not?
It is, yeah. I'm more surprised by the 5-ish score on confidence level, but I think they're right on the respect given to Penn State. I think this is a really good team. I think this is, James Franklin has had some good teams that Ohio State has gone up against. This is probably the best. I don't know. Maybe it's a hard comparison to make, but I think this is the most belief that I've sensed sort of nationally in Penn State's ability to like win the Big Ten East, and not in the way that they won it in 2016, like win it in a way that positions them to make the playoff.
Big Ten Media Days, it felt like a lot of like Big Ten network analysts and stuff were in on Penn State. I was trying to look at some national picks. CBSSports.com They have 7 people pick games. 5 picked Ohio State, 2 picked Penn State. Bruce Feldman at The Athletic picked Ohio State by a point. So Austin, I think they're pretty close, but we don't care what other people think. People want to know what we think. Austin Ward.
Yeah.
What do you think? Make your pick, man.
Well, I'm trying to think of like what Bill just said about, where this ranks among the Penn State teams and how that factors in. Until the explosive offensive part is a big concern and a red flag for me. And I don't think that the wide receiver position from Penn State is a real concern for Ohio State, which thinking about Denzel Burke's status would be like, well, this could be their chance to stake a claim and go win one on the road. Like, I don't think that this is the most complete version of Penn State that Ohio State has faced. And I think the one that they played last year in State College was probably better equipped to pull off a big win and beat Ohio State in that sort of manner than this one's is. I could certainly be wrong. I'm not meaning that to diminish Penn State's standing in the Big Ten race, the East Division, the college football playoff race, but I don't get the sense that this team, especially Joey Porter on the other side at cornerback, like I don't know that they're as complete top to bottom this year as they even were last year. But I guess that plays. We all have our opinions about that. That's the fun of it. And we get to find out Saturday at noon. And once it gets there, I believe Ohio State is going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it 30-20. That is a cover and the over for Ohio State. My thinking on this game, and I did compare it to Notre Dame earlier on, Doug, I'll stand by that. I know that there's so much talk about the top 10 defenses here and ball control for Penn State. I tend to think that there is a better chance that Ohio State finds another gear and eventually pulls away and hits that total and covers maybe by more than 10. That's what's in the back of my mind. If the potential outcomes here, tight game, field goal, 17-14 like Notre Dame, I can see why there's that projection. I feel like it'll be more wide open, and I think ultimately Ohio State is that much more talented than Penn State right now, and they're playing at home. The Drew Auer conversation, we'll get to some of that later on, but I think this is a game that is set up for Ohio State to prove itself and quiet some more of those skeptics that are still out there.
So again, that's over the 45.5. In addition, like that's a pretty solid win. The last time, again, as we said, James Franklin's 1-8 against Ohio State. The only win 2016. The 6 games since then, I think you kind of throw out the COVID year. Penn State did not handle the COVID year very well. They were not good, and Ohio State kind of blew them out. I think Ohio State was up by 18 going into the fourth quarter of that game. The other 5 games since Penn State's last win going into the fourth quarter, Penn State led by 2 scores. And the 4 times Ohio State led, they led by 1, 2, 3, and 4 going into the fourth quarter. So this has been Ohio State. This is a tight game, but often, to your point, Austin, in a bunch of those games in the fourth quarter, Ohio State's pulled away, dominated, found a way to win in a way that Penn State has not found a way to win. Landis, what's your pick?
I am envisioning this playing out similarly to the Notre Dame game. Low scoring. I don't know that I see either of these offenses stringing together more than a couple of scoring drives against these defenses. I think the defenses are the story of this game. I think they're 2 of the very best defenses in the country, and they'll both show that on Saturday. And I'm not even trying to take away from either offense. I just really think these defenses are that good, and I think they're kind of going to be the star of the show. So my pick is Ohio State 20, Penn State 17. You guys can check out bold predictions on Friday to see how I think this game is going to end, or like exactly how I think it's going to end. But I think it's a tight win for Ohio State. So I'm on the cover for Penn State with the points, and I'm on the under. The only thing that makes me nervous about the under, like Austin mentioned last year's game, how weird it got. It was 21-16 with 9 minutes left. And then there were 43 points scored.
Yeah.
And that's happened. Like I was looking back at some past games. In the 2021 game, Ohio State scored like 2 touchdowns in 90 seconds. It was a touchdown and then a fumble return for a touchdown. In the 2019 game, Penn State scored 17 points in 4 minutes. So there have been like weird spurts of scoring in this series that make me a little nervous about the total here. But I think the game script is more or less what it looked like against Notre Dame, so I'm going to take the under.
That's the other factor, Bill, when you're looking at the over-unders. Defensive touchdowns count. Special teams touchdowns count.
Mm-hmm.
And that's both happened. We're talking about 2016. those things can, and even what 2019 was that the Saquon Barkley kickoff return, or 2017? 17. So you have you have special team scores and GT Tuamoloau pick sixes, and that gets it weird. Like, even if the defense is thriving, that can impact the scoreboard, obviously.
We'll get to this later, but you sound like a Ferentz more and more every day. Defensive points count. Special team scores count. That's what they wear that on shirts in the house around there.
I have
special
one.
Teams touchdowns count too. I asked the texters a question specifically about the Ohio State offensive line. How concerned are you that Penn State could overwhelm the Ohio State offensive line and win Saturday's game almost on that alone? Choices were: not that worried, Ohio State can handle it or find other ways to win; somewhat worried, it's a bad matchup, but that alone won't cost Ohio State the game; or I'm very worried, the Penn State defensive line is good and I still don't trust the Ohio State offensive line. 49% very worried, 47% somewhat worried, only 4% not that worried. Where would you vote on that, Austin? Like, is this like a defining characteristic of this game?
I tend to say no, and that's not to say not worried. I think that Penn State's defensive line, and that is a good matchup for them. I think the pass protection has been solid enough for Ohio State that they should be able to withstand. And look, they probably will give up 2 or 3 sacks, but I think this is one of those situations where the passing attack for Ohio State is going to win the game. They don't have to go up and line up and bully Penn State and run the football, in my mind. And I don't think that they should. I don't think that's the path forward to a victory. So if that pass protection holds up 90% of the time, and the few times that it doesn't result in a bizarre decision from Kyle McCord with a fumble or a forced interception. If those mistakes don't happen on those 5 or 10 plays where it may get more difficult, I don't see that as a problem. So I think there is a reason to be concerned, because Ohio State has not played a perfect game, both run blocking and pass protection on the offensive line this season, against anybody, even against opponents where they should have been much better. Penn State can take advantage of that, but I don't think it is something that will cost Ohio State the game.
Landis, I also asked the tech subscribers to rank their confidence in 5 main areas for Ohio State in order. It's passing offense, passing defense, rushing defense, and then coaching and intangibles. They're most confident in this game, and it's for this game specifically. They're most confident in Ohio State's pass defense. Next is Ohio State's pass offense, then Ohio State run defense, then the coaching, then the Ohio State rushing offense. So that's the thing, like, hey, maybe with the injuries and the offensive line, maybe Ohio State can't run the ball here. Like, do you think Ohio State, both defending a Penn State team that kind of throws it short and then trying to air it out maybe a little bit, Penn State doesn't have Marv, is through the air where Ohio State wins this game on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, well, actually, maybe not. I think on offense, yes. I think Ohio State's ability to be explosive will make the difference in terms of them winning the game. I think I just don't envision Penn State hitting many, if any, explosive plays, and I think Ohio State, even if it has some struggles, will hit a couple of them. I still think on the defensive side for Ohio State, it's more about stopping Penn State's run game and like doing what Jim Knowles said, which is taking Penn State off schedule, because they've just been perfectly fine rushing for three, converting 3rd and short. That can't happen in this game. I don't think 3rd and short defense has not been Ohio State's strength this year. It was a problem against Notre Dame, which is why Notre Dame held the ball so long. So I think setting up 3rd and medium to long for Penn State's offense is the way that Ohio State's defense wins this game.
So Landis is taking Penn State with the 4.5 with that pick of Ohio State winning by 3, and Landis is also under. So Austin and Landis are opposite each other completely on these picks. We do want to note, against the spread this year, Bill and I are 2-4. Austin is 3-3. And on the totals, Austin is 3-3. Bill is 2-4. I am 1-5. So as always, listen to Austin. We like CFB.
Don't do that always. No.
Well, not always, at least for the betting. CFB Graft is a thing that we like, some sort of inside stats thing. Their projection for this game, 53% win probability, 47% win probability for Penn State. So Ohio State, 53-47 on the win probability. Their projected points is 26-25, an Ohio State 1-point win. And the texters, I asked them this for the first time this week. They're taking the under 45.5, 71%. And they're taking Penn State with the points, 51%. So, that's Landis. They're with Landis. They're against you, Austin.
Good luck, folks.
We'll check my bankroll later in the show.
The bankroll.
See how that's working out.
I like for real.
Yeah.
We'll get that shirt for you. Special teams points count. Check the bankroll. I'm picking Penn State to win. So this is my theory of the case here. I don't think Ohio State's a 12-0 team. When we asked the texters a couple of weeks ago, I think even I can't remember what game it was, but it was like, what do you think Ohio State's record is going to be this year? And 11-1 was overwhelming. I don't think there's a lot of people who think, boom, this is undefeated or bust for Ohio State. It's better, and I'm defending it's better for Ohio State to lose to Penn State and beat Michigan than it is to beat Michigan and lose to than it is to beat Penn State and then lose to Michigan. I think that's undeniable emotionally, mentally, and for the playoff race. There's some stuff happening this week with tiebreakers. It's not related to this game specifically, but if you're an Ohio State fan and a Michigan fan, you want Minnesota to beat Iowa. If you're Penn State, you want Iowa to beat Minnesota, because if they wind up in a three-way tie at 11-1, all beating each other once in the East, whoever has the best record among the West opponents for that team is going to be the tiebreaker. So just keep that in the back of your mind. My fears about the Ohio State offensive line have not been alleviated through the course of this season. And when I had fears in the preseason, it was this game. It was pointing at this game that Penn State's the team I think that can make them pay, even more than Michigan. So my theory here is, James Franklin's 1-8. Can James Franklin beat Ohio State twice in a decade? That's not a dominant, but it's still Ohio State dominates Penn State, but twice in a decade, that's not too much to ask to me. I think this is Penn State's best team in the Franklin era. I think Ohio State still has some stuff to figure out. Denzel Burke, we don't know. Emeka Egbuka, we don't know. The running backs, we don't know, right? I just think I think they're going to get maybe the best version of Penn State we've seen. And I don't think right now, this is the best version of Ohio State. So my long-term view on this is something they kind of can't block it. There's some things offensively that don't work. Penn State's defense is legit. And then Ohio State has a month and a half to fix it before Michigan. And maybe they will. But that doesn't mean I'm sure that Ohio State's going to beat Michigan, but that's kind of how I'm thinking that. And I do think Penn State needs this game more. This is the end-all be-all for Penn State. It's not the end-all be-all for Ohio State. Doesn't mean fans are going to just shrug it off if Ohio State loses, but I think there's a lot of things set up for Penn State to win, and the health factor is a little bit of a shove to me that if you're not going to get the best version of Ohio State. So I have 2014, obviously taking Penn State with the points and taking the under. I like the under a lot because I do think the Penn State defense is for real, and I also don't think Penn State's going to score a ton. So anybody want to yell at me?
It's all very well reasoned. I mean, it's not. I think that's the beauty of it, is that this truly is a matchup game that can go either way. And then when I made my pick, Doug, I just think the team who has another gear to reach, that has more upside that they haven't fulfilled yet, is the home team, and maybe that propels them forward. There's an hour conversation there that we're talking about how complete Penn State is. We don't know what they have at quarterback. You've talked about this on Kings of Columbus throughout the week. They may have saved up all the deep shots, and he may go out and slice up a secondary, and then for the rest of the year, you see explosive plays down the field. But that hasn't happened yet, and for him to go on the road and engineer a win like this, I am skeptical of that at this point. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. I think everybody agrees Drew Allar has that sort of potential, and we haven't seen that yet. So I don't think we've seen the best version of either of these teams yet, based on their opponents and based on the way Ohio State's played.
I'm just mad about how much power Iowa has, and not only winning the West, but now determining the winner of the East too.
Yeah,
flawed system.
I blame Austin. At least Austin. Austin's the best thing about Iowa. Nobody likes Iowa, but at least Austin's making money on it. So
that's fine with me.
It's the saving grace. We'll get to that at the end of the show. For now, Landis and I are taking the points with Penn State. Austin's given the points. Landis and I are under. Austin is over. Again, Austin has been better at this, so just keep that in the back of your mind. When we come back, we're each making 2 prop bets on the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions next on the Ohio State Pick Show Doug Lesmerises, Austin Ward, Bill Landis, the Pick Show here on the podcast. So grateful you guys make us part of your week as an Ohio State football fan. Austin, will go to you first. Again, the bankroll is a climbing up. You're in the positive. We all had winning weeks last week for the first time. I think it's actually the first time Landis and I had winning weeks at all. I think it was your third straight winning week, Austin. But we all we had a better feel for the Ohio State Purdue game on some of the prop bets there. You guys both hit on the Cade Stover touchdown. Last week, I hit on my Kyle McCord touchdown passes and my overall Ohio State team touchdowns. You hit on the Hudson Card under passing yards, Landis. So we're hot.
It's fun. It's fun when you win, right?
So Austin is now all these bets, right? When we make 5 picks, the total and the spread on the Ohio State game, 2 Ohio State props and the Northern bet. We're betting $10 each on those games. So each week we're putting $50 out that we're expending, and then we're seeing what we get back. Right now, Austin up $70.68 after a huge week last week. I'm climbing, but I'm still down $75.39. And Landis is down $120.09. But Landis, I think you're only going to be down $94 very soon. So hang in.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Just keep plugging away.
Just wait
keep
till
swinging.
Michigan week. That minus sign is going to be gone. I promise you.
Yeah. So here we are. We're firing. Austin Ward, 2 Ohio State props from you.
So the more I thought about this quarterback matchup, and that's where you start with any game of this magnitude. There's a lot of fascinating subplots. We talked about those after practice on Wednesday night on Snap Judgments. If you missed that, but Drew Auer going one way from Ohio to Pennsylvania, and Kyle McCord going the other, and high school coach being involved with the Nittany Lions, and then the 2018 recruiting visit for Kyle McCord. Both of these guys now into that first full year as they're starting quarterbacks and trying to take the next step. Kyle McCord has had his experience going on the road and trying to beat a tough opponent and steal a win from an unbeaten team and a tough defense. And he answered the bell with a comeback drive in the last minute. He gets to do this at home now. He's been through that experience. He's got the confidence, and Auer's doing it for the first time. We'll see how that goes for him, but I am betting that it could be rough because Ohio State's defense is playing at a really high level in the secondary. Take Denzel Burke out of the equation. That may certainly help Penn State, but I think there's enough pieces around for Ohio State to make up for that. The pass rush is getting better and more tenacious as the season goes along. So I am parlaying that matchup with Kyle McCord going over 1.5 passing touchdowns and Drew Auer under 1.5. That is an SGP special on DraftKings. So I have that at plus 150. That is prop number 1.
The Austin Ward special. We're going to get there where you're going to go on DraftKings and Austin Ward's face is going to be right there.
I hope so.
We'll get there.
Is DraftKings not watching this show yet? We're halfway through the year. We don't have a sponsor. Come on down. I'll keep plugging you.
They're coming.
Also on DraftKings, a fine app. One of the finest. Marv last year was phenomenal. 10 catches, all of them go for first downs. That's a pretty good ratio. Over 180 yards. He was dynamic. I don't think, as I said, Penn State's secondary is as talented as it was a year ago. Once you take Joey Porter Jr. out of the equation, I don't think that they're bad by any stretch of the imagination, but that was a good one, and they had no way to contain him. Bill mentioned this in at another point throughout the week. He went back and watched some of those catches, and Penn State was throwing different looks at him, different people. It didn't matter. Marv carved them all up. So I think especially in a world where Emeka Egbuka may not play, that puts the onus even more on Marvin Harrison and Kyle McCord's faith in him to deliver. I think he will. He's motivated after those 3 drops. I like a lot of what's going on here with Marv, and I went up to the alternate receiving total on DraftKings, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it. 120 yards gets you plus 260, and I jumped all over.
He was like 180 last year or something, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. All right,
pretty good.
So those are Austin's 2 props. Landis, bring it.
Going to stick with the hot hand of Cade Stover in this game. He won for me last week, so he's going to win for me again this week.
You took the hand from Austin. It was Austin's hand.
Listen, I'm happy to help. Everyone should share.
Handing over the hand. Okay.
As long as they keep giving this guy, better than even money to score touchdowns, I think it's probably a worthwhile investment. Kyle because he's scored in the last 2 games now, right? He went through the first few games of the season not finding the end zone while still being an important part of the passing offense, and now he's finding the end zone. You get a plus 155 for him to have 1 receiving touchdown in this game. I actually think he's got some favorable matchups perhaps against Penn State's safeties in the middle of the field. I think the outside, the corners versus the receivers, I like Ohio State to win that more often than not, but I would not be surprised if Penn State kind of holds its own a little bit there and maybe at least like keeps the outside receivers out of the end zone. But I do think they might have a hard time keeping Cade out of the end zone. So I'm going with another Cade Stover touchdown this week at plus 155. And then my other prop bet was I wasn't actually sure you could do this, but I'm parlaying the first half total and the second half total going under on both for plus 242 at DraftKings. So like I said, it's going to be a low scoring game. This dovetails with my under pick. I don't know that I see either of the like these teams combining for 3 touchdowns in either of these halves. I just think it's going to be really hard for them to move the ball consistently. So same concerns I guess I had with taking the total game under, that the spurtability of these teams in this games might come up again. But I feel fairly confident that these defenses will prevent that from happening. So I'm taking the under in each half.
Bill's got that Chris Moneymaker all in going here with the under.
Yeah. If I'm wrong, I'm going to be very wrong.
So we got some feedback last week. We didn't really talk about the weather on this show much last week. And then people said, hey, the weather. And then Ryan Day after the fact was like, hey, man, like 5 days out, we were all freaked out about the weather. We made a Devin Brown package for the weather. And then it was fine. It didn't really affect the game. It rained some in the second half. I'm always more concerned with wind than rain. The forecast at the moment is like in the 50s, 40% chance of rain in Columbus for Saturday, occasional showers in the afternoon, winds 10 to 15 miles per hour. We have a lot of throwing props related here. Austin, anything in your head about trying to factor the weather into any of this, or is it kind of normal fall? Maybe it's a little damp, but it's not going to change the game.
Yeah, I think that it shouldn't change the game in my mind. I don't think it's going to be that extreme, that severe to impact the game. And in Ohio State, they're built to do that, right? I mean, if they're going to win, if I'm going to have faith in the things that I'm saying about this matchup, like Ohio State can't blame the weather. They have to keep throwing the football. And in a lot of ways, last week could be a good test for that. It should be better in the Horseshoe on Saturday than it was at Purdue. Marvin Harrison talked about this on Wednesday night, Doug, that like maybe he should have taken his gloves off earlier. Like the way there were people on the field talking about, it's like, well, the way that they make these footballs now, once they get wet, they're way tackier. They stick to you more. Like you shouldn't use the gloves. Like that makes it worse. And so that may actually wind up working in Ohio State's favor. Like Kyle McCord didn't seem that bothered by the wet. There were, a couple of weeks ago against Maryland, some of the deep shots. Yes, well, was that the wind? It may have been more of the ankle than the weather. So I think that Ohio State will run its offense, even if it's drizzling, a little wet, raining hard. Like I think they still have to throw the football.
Yeah, I sent to the texters last week when it felt like maybe the wind was going to be a thing. I think I've covered 3 games in my Ohio State career where like the wind just prevented you from passing. One was the Northwestern game last year. Yeah. There was a Michigan State game like in 17 maybe. JT Barrett was talking about the ball going sideways. And there was the Illinois game in 11 when they completed 1 pass. And I think they won at Illinois, and it was like you couldn't throw the ball at all. So like as long as it's not that, and that I looked at the win for those games, that's like 20 plus. Right. So if this is like 10 to 15, I don't think we're there. So I'm going receiving props as well. I'll take a Marv prop. I'll take Marv over the 85.5 receiving yards on FanDuel plus a touchdown. That's 176 to put those two together. And then I have a Drew Aller prop. I am believing in that they have been holding this back. And he threw for 200 yards in the first half against West Virginia and then hasn't thrown for that much in a single game since. His number is 190.5 that I saw on FanDuel. So I don't think that's too much to ask. He's pretty good in the intermediate stuff in the middle of the field. And then I put both of his tight ends in there. Theo Johnson over 21.5 receiving yards. Ty Warren over 16.5 receiving yards. I'm curious about the Ohio State linebackers in coverage a little bit, especially if we maybe don't see as much Steel Chambers. I don't know what they're going to do there, but I think those are like, once you get beyond Keandre Lambert-Smith, that's who he's going to throw to. So like a decent, but not outrageous Drew Aller passing game, and he utilizes the tight ends. Those 3 things same game parlay plus 343 on FanDuel. So it's just Drew Aller throwing to his tight ends. So we'll see.
Drew Aller in that West Virginia game had 72 yards on one completion in the first half, and then whatever it was.
But he made throws, and again, like that, he stepped up in the pocket and took some more shots. He almost threw like 2 or 3 picks in that half as well, which I think they pulled it back. There's a kind of a thing with Drew. Like Drew Aller's never thrown a pick. He has thrown some balls this year that could have been picked, maybe even should have been picked. So he's not like a completely precise guy, but I also think he's a guy who will step up and can rip it if they ask him to. And I just think maybe this is a game where they ask him to. Nobody else thinks that. Okay. Northern Time with Austin Ferentz. To be fair, my favorite Ferentz. We'll do that next on the pick show. All right, Northern picks, our 5th pick. It's another $10 bet. You got to pick something in the North, and Austin loves the Hawkeyes. Bring it.
Yeah, we're calling this the Kings of the West Parlay Super Boost. Think about it, DraftKings. It can't miss. Everyone loves betting on Iowa if you love money, and I'm doing it again. Not quite to, I don't know. The payout's not the same as it was last week against Wisconsin because
plus
for some
625 last week. Your Iowa super parlay Austin boost.
Yeah. Took them out right, and if you jumped on board with me, which it sounds like some of you did, I hope you had a great Saturday night. Iowa, it's
the only people watching Iowa are people who have bet on Iowa. You cannot watch that if you don't have money on it.
I wasn't even watching it because I was driving back from Purdue, and I looked at the score, and I was like, 15-6. That is a work of art. I can't wait to watch this bad boy back later on and enjoy knowing that it cashed for me at the end of the day. I mean, they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. They're also going to benefit from the fact that they do not play any good offenses in the West. Mm-hmm. That's a real trash pile going on over there. Iowa is in complete control. We were talking about this before, availability on Wednesday night. Like, they can even lose again and still be in control of the West. It's absolutely wild. Like, they're gonna win the West. And when I said that 3 weeks ago, I was like, well, that'll be hard because they can't score. But it turns out that doesn't matter at all. They don't need to. They're going to cover 4.5 this week. And I teased Doug, I took your advice. Like, I wasn't being aggressive enough. The under, I dropped all the way down to 27.5 on the single game parlay.
Gross.
So we've got, I think this one will probably be something like 13-5. And so I think I could have gone one more level lower. I'm like, that's pushing it. Let's go with 27.5. And that got me to plus 380 on DraftKings.
All right. Iowa, Minnesota. And again, they lost. They had already lost their best tight end. Now they lost their second best tight end. Eric All's out for the year with an
Who cares?
They lost their starting quarterback and their 2 best offensive threats. Landis, please don't bet on Iowa.
I like the implied score of 15-12. Austin's parlay.
If anybody can do it, it's Brian Ferentz and Kirk Ferentz.
I do believe in them. I definitely believe in them. I am also doing a Big Ten single game parlay. I think Michigan is going to just hammer Michigan State. Like, there's not a number high enough, I don't think, for Michigan to score in this game. If they can do it, they're gonna score as many touchdowns as they possibly can. This game got chippy, to say the least, last year in Ann Arbor with the tunnel stuff and like players getting like charged with crimes for what happened in the tunnel there. So maybe there are enough unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in this game to make me wrong, but Michigan is very good. Michigan State is very bad and lost a terrible game to Rutgers last week. I think they are on the brink of, if not already, in full-on quit mode, and Michigan's going to make them pay for it. So I'm taking Michigan to cover a big number, 24.5, and the over of 48. I think Michigan does all that by itself. I mean, I could see like a 52-0 win here for Michigan. I don't think Michigan State has a chance.
Plus 202 on DraftKings. That's a good one. And I'm connected to this as well because I'm riding with Rutgers.
Ooh.
And I pushed this thing as high as I could go. So it's an alternate spread. I have Rutgers minus 13.5 at Indiana. That's the highest it was allowed to go. I couldn't pick them winning by 28. It's plus 215 on FanDuel, and this is a combo. I do think the Rutgers defense is legit. I think they'll take the momentum of that win last week, and I think this is not the beginning, it's the continuation of the descent of Indiana in the Tom Allen era. You know, they've reached the point where there's, you know, discussions within that fan base, the media at Indiana about is this it for him? And they've had a lot of trouble handling their quarterback situation. They've already fired the offensive coordinator early in the year. Like, they don't know what to do on offense. And I think everybody's confused by it. And that to me is the exact kind of team that Greg Schiano and this Rutgers defense would take advantage of. So for them to have a 2-score win is not too much to me. I think this is something like 23-6 or something like that. So I didn't just want to take Rutgers. I want to make some money on it. So plus 215, Rutgers minus 13.5. Did you grab a pig, Austin? What is that?
It's the Floyd of Rosedale.
How do you have that? The Ferrets has sent that to you?
Why do you have that?
So, you know, there's the company rivalry trophy that sends all the stuff out for the big. They make them for like smaller models of all of the Big Ten rivalry trophies. When I was covering the league for ESPN as a whole, they're like, "Hey, do you want any of these?" I'm like, "Sure, I'd take some for the office." I'm like, which one do you want? I also have a painting in here. It's my dad's that he got when he was, I don't know why. It's a Leroy Neiman painting of Iowa and Minnesota. He got in like the 1980s, and he's like, "Do you want this?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll put it in the office. I cover the Big Ten." So this is a huge week for me, Doug. I forgot that it was sitting behind me, but you know, we'll just celebrate.
Unbelievable.
We're doing that 43andMe thing for you. We're doing a DNA test to see if you really are a Ferentz. Because
no, to test a Ferentz, it's 3andMe.
There's one thing to pick Iowa every week. There's another to have a pig in your office. Okay.
I hadn't thought about it literally till just now. So sorry for walking away in the middle of your prediction, but I thought it was too good. If we're going to lean all the way into the Ferentz ties, I could have taken it further than I did. So we have fun on this show. That's the whole point.
Excuse me, fellas. Got to get my pig. Okay. So that's where we are. Our picks for Ohio State, our prop bets for this Ohio State-Penn State game. We will have bold predictions on the podcast feed on Friday morning. And then all four of us will be in Ohio Stadium on Saturday. Austin and Berm are always where the Buckeyes are. Landis and I have not yet gone to a game this year, but we're going to this one. And the plan is to do the post-game show live right after the game from the press box at Ohio Stadium. So if you've been listening to our post-game show, same thing. We'll just be in a different spot. If you haven't tried the post-game show yet, this would be a great week to try it because we think it's going to be a great game, and we're going to be there on the scene to absorb that. And then, Austin, you and Berm are still doing your post-game stuff. Snappy J's, the notebook. Like, we're going to be vibing out there in the shoe, right?
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be fun to have all four of us in there to cover this game. It's a big one. I think it deserves this treatment. You know, they don't all. Like it's a little bit of a more logistically challenging for you two with the post game, but you know, for stuff like this, I think we've got to do our best to add to that. I mean, I think it'll be a different, you know, it adds a little bit more for you guys with the atmosphere and having the chance to go down there before the game and see all that stuff and be in the stadium. Like that's what you've both done your whole careers. Like it's been lonely on the row for the podcast because your seats are still reserved up there and I'm just by myself with like 3 seats around and no one to talk to. So it'll be great to have that as well for me personally, but I think that'll be a really cool opportunity, and we've got that, you know, trying to plan that for the game at the end of the year, maybe a Big Ten championship game playoff, but this will be the first test run of that in the stadium. I think it's going to be awesome.
Ohio State favored by 4.5, the total 45.5. Going to be a fun one. We appreciate you guys joining us here for now. For Jeremy Birmingham, making it all work, Austin Ward and Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was the Pick Show on the podcast.